It was just another mundane lunch break at that downtown cafe, the kind where you pretend to be fascinated by your coffee's foam art to avoid eye contact with strangers. That's when Alex walked in, the new guy, with a smile that suggested he knew just how mundane my day had been until he arrived. Tucking my wedding ring into my purse felt like the first step down a path I hadn't planned on taking. But there I was, flirting back, telling myself it was innocent. 2 weeks flashed by in a blur of secret texts and stolen glances. Next thing I knew, I was fabricating a business trip to spend a weekend with Alex at a secluded beach house. The thrill of secrecy was intoxicating, a rush I hadn't felt in years. Just this once, I lied to myself, fully aware I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. David found a text from Alex one evening, his face crumbling as he handed me my phone. "Just a new colleague," I stammered, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. I saw the hurt flash in his eyes, quickly masked by disbelief. He wanted to trust me, and I exploited that trust, convincing myself we could move past a lie so easily told. The affair with Alex became an addiction, each lie to David a brick in the wall I was building between us. Working late again, I'd say, or another last-minute business trip, can you believe it? The lies slipped out effortlessly, my double life spiraling out of my control. Then came our anniversary. David surprised me with tickets for a vacation, his way of reigniting the spark between us. Guilt washed over me like a cold shower, but the call of adventure with Alex drowned out any warning bells. How had I become this person? "Sorry, love, got to go to Paris for work." I lied, ignoring David's text filled with heart emojis as I explored the city of lights, not with my husband, but with my lover. Paris with Alex was a dream, yet even the Louvre and Montmartre couldn't fully mask the guilt gnawing at my conscience. The inevitable crash came when David hired a private investigator. I came home to find him sitting in the dark, photos spread across our coffee table. Pictures of Alex and me, undeniable in our intimacy, were the silent witnesses to my betrayal. David's eyes met mine, and I knew. I had torn us apart, one lie at a time. The moment I confessed, the world stood still. David's silence was a chasm between us, his swift departure a punctuation mark on our life together. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the void he left behind, but sorry was just a word, too small to bridge the gap. Moving in with Alex should have felt like a new beginning, but the charm of our secret encounters quickly faded in the harsh light of day-to-day life. Our small apartment became a cage of reality, the initial euphoria dissolving into the mundane. I missed home. I missed David. I reached out to David, each call a plea for understanding, for a second chance. But all I got in return was a cold, formal legal separation notice. The finality of it, the impersonal lines of text, made it clear there was no going back. Through a mutual friend, I heard about David. He was out there, looking both devastated and determined. "He's consulting lawyers," they whispered, and the words hit me like a physical blow. This was getting real, too real. Then, the unthinkable happened. My bank accounts froze overnight. David was playing hardball, citing my affair as grounds for divorce and going after everything we'd built together. Panic set in as I realized the full extent of my isolation. The legal battles that followed drained me, not just my savings, but my spirit. Each court appearance, each legal document, was a reminder of the mess I'd made. The reality of my situation was a bitter pill, and I was swallowing it alone. Alex's true colors began to show, his once charming attentiveness replaced by control and indifference. Nights I'd spend reminiscing about David's gentle love, the contrast so stark it was almost unbearable. I'd traded a diamond for a stone, and the weight of that realization was crushing. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button, it really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. The day the divorce papers arrived at my work was the day my world publicly crumbled. There I was, papers in hand, as whispers snaked through cubicles. The shame was a cloak I couldn't shed, my private failings laid bare for all to see. In court, David's lawyer was relentless, laying out evidence of my betrayal like a well-played hand of cards. The courtroom's air was thick with judgment, the sympathy clearly not in my favor. I felt every eye on me, branding me the villain in my own story. When the judge ruled in David's favor, awarding him the house and most of our assets, it felt like being stripped of my identity. Each word from the judge was a nail in the coffin of the life I once cherished, a life that now felt like a distant dream. Back in the cramped reality of the apartment with Alex, the dreams soured further. Financial strain and constant bickering eroded what was left of our connection. The man I'd risked everything for was now a stranger, our conversations a minefield of resentment. Seeing David's life flourish on social media added salt to the wound. There he was, the picture of renewal, surrounded by friends and diving into new hobbies. The stark contrast between his ascent and my descent was a daily torture. The day I confronted Alex about the state of our relationship, his response was a cold splash of reality. I never saw a future with us, he admitted, his words slicing through any fantasy one still harbored. It was a confession, a closing statement to our brief, tumultuous affair. The fallout was immediate and personal. My career, once on an upward trajectory, took a hit as whispers turned into loud judgments. A demotion followed, my professional standing another casualty in a long line of losses. Alone, I was forced to confront the magnitude of my mistake, a realization as bitter as it was late. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, David's face started appearing everywhere. There he was, launching his own business, smiling out from local news stories, his success a sharp contrast to my spiraling downfall. Each headline was a reminder of what I'd lost and what he'd gained from our divorce. Then came the party at a mutual friend's house, the first time I'd seen David since the divorce. Our eyes met across the room, but his gaze was empty, devoid of any recognition or warmth. It was clear in that brief look, there was no going back, no hope of even a semblance of our past connection. Alex's departure was swift and merciless. One day he was there, the next, gone, leaving behind a trail of unpaid bills and a broken lease in his wake. The realization that I was truly alone, without even the false comfort of his presence, was a bitter pill indeed. The financial ruin that followed felt almost inevitable. Legal fees from the divorce and losing nearly everything to David pushed me into bankruptcy. The shame of living paycheck to paycheck, of falling so far from the life I once knew, was a constant companion. Depression crept in, a fog that thickened with each passing day. Friends, or those I once considered friends, distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the scandal I'd become. The isolation was profound, a daily reminder of the consequences of my choices. In a moment of desperation, I reached out to David. Not to ask for forgiveness or a second chance, but for closure, a final attempt to understand and to be understood. My messages went unanswered, his silence a deafening confirmation of the finality of our split. The rumor of David's engagement was the cruelest cut of all. Hearing about it felt like a physical blow, a visceral reminder of my replacement and erasure from his life. The realization that I was truly forgotten, replaced in his heart and life, was the harshest truth to accept. Clutching at straws to find some semblance of normalcy, I found myself at the door of a support group for divorced individuals. As I listened to stories mirroring my own tales of betrayal and loss, it was both comforting and heartbreaking to know I wasn't alone in my suffering. The job hunt was humiliating, a stark reminder of how far I'd fallen. Finally landing a position that was a shadow of my former career felt like scraping the bottom of the barrel. Yet, the monotony of the work offered a respite from the chaos of my personal life, a dull balm for my frayed nerves. When David married again, the news spread like wildfire, the blissful photos on social media a glaring contrast to my solitude. Seeing him so happy, so quickly, felt like reopening a wound I thought was beginning to heal. At the new job, overhearing colleagues whisper about David's latest success was a daily torture. His name, once a source of love and comfort, now brought only regret and pain, a constant reminder of everything I'd lost. The decision to downsize was both practical and symbolic, selling off pieces of a life that no longer existed. Each item sold, each memory parted with, was a step away from the past, but also a stark reminder of the cost of my choices. Then came the health scare, a jarring confrontation with my own mortality. Lying in the hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile, impersonal walls, the absence of visitors underscored the profound loneliness of my new reality. The stark contrast to a past filled with love and companionship was a low point, a realization of how isolated I'd become. Recovery was a slow and humbling process, but it offered a silver lining, a chance to reassess my life and priorities. Volunteering emerged as a beacon of hope, a way to give back and find purpose amidst the wreckage of my decisions. Helping others became a small step towards redemption, a way to piece together a sense of self-worth from the ruins of my former life. Running into an old friend, or rather, someone who used to be a friend, was like walking into a glass door you didn't see. The conversation was laden with awkward pauses and pitiful glances that made my skin crawl. "I hope you're doing okay," they said, their eyes betraying the kind of pity that felt worse than outright disdain. It was clear I was a cautionary tale, a story they'd recount with a shake of their heads. In the midst of this personal desert, volunteer work became my oasis. The act of helping others, of doing something that wasn't about me or my mess, offered a sliver of peace. Yet, even as I cherished this newfound purpose, it was hard not to see it as just a drop in the bucket compared to the ocean of my mistakes. Cleaning my tiny apartment one day, I stumbled upon an old photo of David and me. Our smiles were wide, carefree, the kind of happiness that now seemed like it belonged to someone else. Holding the photo, I was struck by a wave of nostalgia so strong it was almost physical, a longing for a time before I made the choices that led me here. Starting a blog was an impulse, a middle-of-the-night idea that felt like it might be worth something. I poured my heart out anonymously, detailing my journey without names or specifics, but with enough honesty that it couldn't be anything but true. Writing became my therapy, a way to untangle the mess of emotions and events that had defined my life for so long. To my surprise, the blog resonated with others. Comments trickled in, then flowed, stories of betrayal, of heartbreak, of trying to rebuild after everything falls apart. A community formed in the shared space of our collective grief, a reminder that no one navigates pain alone. Then came the letter that felt like a punch to the gut, a legal notice from David's lawyer accusing me of defamation through my blog posts. The thought of facing David in court, of reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal, filled me with dread. Court was a blur of legal jargon and cold stares. Standing there, facing David and his legal team, I was acutely aware of every choice that had led to this moment. Yet, when the case was dismissed, relief washed over me. It wasn't a victory, just the closing of another painful chapter. The courtroom, with its sterile indifference, was a stark reminder of the consequences of my actions, a silent witness to the cost of seeking redemption in the wake of self-inflicted ruin. Just when I thought I had a sliver of space to breathe, to vent, the universe yanked the rug out from under me, again. The blog, my digital confessional, was shut down, a casualty of legal battles and settlements. It felt like being gagged, stripped of the one thing that made me feel heard amidst the chaos of my own making. So, I turned to therapy, a move that reeked of desperation and, maybe, a bit of hope. Sitting across from a stranger, unpacking the baggage of my choices, felt like trying to climb a mountain with my legs tied. Hard, painful, but necessary. "You've got to face this head-on," my therapist said, her voice a mix of sternness and warmth. And face it I did, week after agonizing week. The loneliness, though, that was a beast of a different kind. It clung to me, a constant reminder of the bridges I'd burned. Therapy offered glimpses of understanding, tiny breakthroughs that felt like finding pieces of myself I thought were lost. But outside that room, the reality of my isolation hit hard. Friends, family, David, they were worlds away, living lives I was no longer a part of. A year after the divorce was final, I found myself walking past our old house. It was an accident, really, a wrong turn on a long walk trying to clear my head. But there it was, our house, only it wasn't ours anymore. David had moved on, the place transformed in ways that made it clear I had no place there, not anymore. The sight of it, so familiar yet so alien, was a gut punch. Money, or the lack thereof, became a constant source of stress. I picked up a second job, the physical toll mirroring the mess of my inner world. Juggling bills, dodging calls from creditors, the hustle was relentless, a daily grind that left me drained. Then came the news that knocked the wind out of me: David's wife was pregnant. It wasn't just the fact that he had truly moved on, it was the realization that any lingering fantasy one had of us reconciling, of finding our way back to each other, was just that, a fantasy. The finality of my exclusion from his life, from a future I once thought would be ours, was undeniable. In those quiet moments alone in my cramped apartment, the full magnitude of what I'd done to my life hit me. Reflecting on the journey from that first, seemingly innocent flirtation with Alex to the utter devastation of my marriage, my career, my sense of self, the weight of my choices was crushing. The pain of acknowledging my role in my downfall, of seeing the destruction I'd wrought with clear eyes, was sharp, a cut that went deep. Standing alone, surrounded by the remnants of a life I once knew, the truth was stark, unforgiving. I was alone, not because of some twist of fate or cruel turn of the universe, but because of me. My choices, my actions, had led me here. The loneliness, the loss, the pain, I had no one to blame but myself. It was a bitter pill, a hard truth to swallow, but swallow it I did. Facing that reality, owning the mess I'd made, was perhaps the first real step toward something like redemption. Or, at the very least, the moment the invite hit our mailbox, I should have known. A beach retreat for couples, Alex's attempt to sprinkle some magic on what we both knew was fading fast. But hope, that tricky little devil, made me say yes. We arrived with the sun dipping low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink I hadn't noticed in years. Maybe it was the beauty, or maybe it was the silence between us, but right then, I felt that the passion that used to ignite at just a glance now required a search through the embers. Then came Leo, like a scene straight out of those romance novels I'd scoff at but secretly devour. He was there alone, a detail that stuck out at a couple's retreat. Our first chat was accidental, a mix-up over dinner seating that led to shared laughs and, unexpectedly, a spark. The days that followed turned into a blur of secret meetings and whispered promises under the guise of exploring the resort. Each step away from Alex and toward Leo felt like tearing a piece of my moral compass away, yet I couldn't stop. The night under the stars, when Leo's lips met mine, felt like stepping into another universe where guilt didn't exist, only us. But guilt is a shadow that waits for the dawn. It crept in with each secret touch, each lie that slipped easily off my tongue. I was playing with fire, mesmerized by its dance, ignoring the burn. Alex noticed, of course. His eyes, once filled with warmth, now narrowed with suspicion. The question started, casual at first then pointed. Why are you always tired? Who were you talking to on the beach? I countered with reassurances that sounded hollow even to my ears. Each day, the double life weighed heavier, a balancing act between exhilaration and dread. I was lost in the thrill, ignoring the inevitable fallout, believing I could keep the two worlds separate. But worlds collide, secrets surface, and hearts, no matter how guarded, break. The air was charged, the kind of tension you feel before a storm hits. That's how it felt the moment I walked through the door, and Alex was there, waiting. His eyes weren't the warm brown I fell in love with, they were cold, questioning. We need to talk, Mia, he said, and every cell in my body screamed to run. I played it cool, too cool. About what? My voice was steady, but my heart? It was a traitor, pounding against my chest like it wanted to confess. Mia, where have you been spending your afternoons? His question wasn't just a question, it was an accusation. I laughed, a sound so fake it made my ears hurt. Around. The retreat is huge, Alex. You know that. Denial was my shield, but it was cracking. The days that followed were a blur of stolen moments with Leo. The danger, the risk of being caught, it only added to the thrill. We were reckless, meeting in daylight, laughter ringing out, not caring who heard. Then came the day Alex found that earring, an earring that wasn't mine, under our bed. The look on his face was something I'll never forget. It was the moment I knew the lies were catching up to me. Alex turned detective after that. Notes about my comings and goings, checks on my phone when I was careless enough to leave it unattended. I could see the pieces falling into place in his mind, each one a hammer blow to the life we'd built. Leo was no help, his words a siren call to destruction. Leave him, Mia, we can be happy together. It was tempting, so tempting to believe in this fantasy we'd created. I told myself my marriage was a sinking ship, that I was just taking the only lifeboat available. Lies. All lies I wrapped around me like a blanket. Alex's next move was a masterstroke. A surprise dinner, to talk things through, he said. I stumbled upon the plans accidentally, a reservation for two at our favorite restaurant, a place filled with memories of a time when love was enough. That night, I made my choice. I stood at the crossroads between my past and what I thought was my future, and I chose Leo. But as I left, part of me mourned for what could have been, for the love Alex and I shared, now buried under a mountain of lies and broken trust. The night I decided to leave Alex, my heart was a wild drumbeat echoing the turmoil inside me. I'd stumbled upon his plan, a surprise dinner meant to be a stage for confrontation, not reconciliation. It was the push I needed, a sign to jump into the unknown with Leo. I approached Alex, rehearsing calm explanations in my head. But words, once allies, betrayed me. I think it's best if I leave, I started, my voice trembling despite my resolve. Alex's reaction was immediate, his anger a tangible force. Leave, for him? The conversation spiraled, our words weapons that left wounds too deep to heal. In the end, I walked out. The door slamming shut a punctuation mark to our shared life. My steps towards Leo's place were fueled by a mix of defiance and hope. I imagined our new beginning, the life I'd convinced myself we could have. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. Leo's door opened to reveal not the future I dreamed of, but a reality check I wasn't ready for. Another woman, her presence a silent thunder that shattered my illusions. I returned to what used to be our home, only to find the locks changed, my belongings unceremoniously piled outside. Among them, a letter from Alex, its words a final goodbye, not just from him but from the life I knew. He knew about the affair, his revenge not just leaving me but ensuring I had nothing to return to. Desperation set in as I reached out to friends and family, only to be met with silence or words laced with disappointment. Alex had been thorough, sharing our sordid tale with anyone who'd listen. My social circle, once a source of comfort, was now a minefield. The final blow came with my job loss. My career, once a part of my identity, now a casualty of the chaos I'd caused. My workplace, connected to Alex's professional network, had no place for me anymore. In a matter of days, I'd lost everything: my husband, my lover, my friends, and my job. Sitting among the ruins of my life, I realized the cost of my choices. The pursuit of a fleeting passion had led me here, to this moment of utter despair. The realization was a bitter pill, each consequence a lesson in the harshest terms. The day I arrived in the new city felt like stepping onto another planet. Alone, with the weight of my past actions crushing me, I couldn't help but wonder how I'd let it all come to this. My support system was gone, my financial security a distant memory, and my self-respect? Shattered into pieces so small, I doubted they could ever be pieced back together. The first few weeks were a blur of job hunting and acclimating to a life that felt foreign. The small, run-down apartment I could afford was a constant reminder of my fall from grace. Each creak of the floorboards, each flicker of the faulty lights, echoed the turmoil inside me. It was during one of my aimless walks through the city that I saw them, a couple, so deeply in love, laughing and holding each other like they were the only two people in the world. They were a mirror to the past, to what Alex and I once had before I tore it all apart. The sight of them was a punch to the gut, a reminder of the happiness I'd sacrificed for a fleeting desire. I managed to find work, but it was a far cry from the career I'd left behind. Serving coffee and wiping tables wasn't what I'd envisioned for myself, but pride was a luxury I could no longer afford. Each day was a struggle, not just with the menial tasks, but with the internal battle raging within me. Then came the legal papers, a stark white envelope that felt heavier than lead. Alex was filing for divorce, and he was coming for everything. The proceedings were a blur, a series of meetings and signatures that felt both endless and too quick. The court's decision was a blow I had anticipated but still wasn't prepared for. Alex was awarded a large portion of our shared assets, leaving me financially and emotionally drained. Sitting in my dimly lit apartment, the judgment in hand, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that led me here. My choices, my betrayal, had cost me everything. The loneliness was a constant companion, a reminder of the price of my actions. The journey from there to here was marked by loss, a loss of love, of dignity, of the life I once knew. Yet, amidst the wreckage of my own making, there was a glimmer of something else. Not hope, not yet, but the faintest hint of determination. If I had the strength to face the consequences of my actions, maybe, just maybe, I had the strength to rebuild. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick. But for the first time since everything fell apart, I wondered if there was a chance to start again, to forge a new path from the ashes of my mistakes. I never thought my personal life would become the fodder for gossip magazines, yet here I was, hiding behind sunglasses and a hat, praying no one would recognize me as I walked down the street. My affair, my downfall, it was all out there, a spectacle for the world to consume. Friends I once considered close turned their backs, their whispers a cacophony that followed me everywhere. The isolation was palpable, a constant companion in my newfound solitude. The stress and depression, relentless shadows dogging my steps, finally took their toll. One morning, I woke up gasping for air, my heart racing in a way that felt anything but normal. The hospital visit that followed was a wake-up call, the sterile environment a stark contrast to the chaos of my life. Lying in that hospital bed, I realized if I didn't make a change, I might not get another chance. In search of redemption, or perhaps just a distraction from my own thoughts, I started volunteering at a local charity. It was there, among people who knew nothing of my past, that I found a semblance of peace. Helping others, contributing to something larger than my own story, it gave me a purpose I hadn't realized I was searching for. One evening, inspired by the genuine connections I was forming, I penned an apology letter to Alex. It was the most honest piece of writing I'd ever done, a raw admission of my faults and an acknowledgement of the pain I'd caused. But as I sealed the envelope, I hesitated. Sending it felt like an intrusion, a disruption to the life Alex had rebuilt without me. With a heavy heart, I tucked the letter away, a symbol of a closure I'd have to find within myself. In the midst of my lowest point, I found companionship in an unlikely place, a rescue dog with kind eyes and a wagging tail, oblivious to the mistakes of my past. He didn't care about the gossip or the judgment, only that I was there to provide love and a home. Adopting him was a step toward something new, a commitment to healing and moving forward. Slowly, the small victories began to add up. Each day, I managed to save a little, working towards a goal that once seemed impossible. When I finally had enough to move to a better apartment, it was more than just a change of scenery. It was a tangible sign of progress, a milestone that marked the distance I'd come from the person I used to be. This journey, fraught with mistakes and lessons learned the hard way, taught me the value of resilience and the power of starting over. With each small achievement, I was rebuilding not just my life, but my sense of self. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, I was ready to face it, one step at a time, with a loyal companion by my side and a newfound strength within. The day I ran into Leo was like stumbling upon a ghost from a past life, one I had tried desperately to forget. There he was, as charming and disarming as ever, but the spell he once held over me had lost its power. "Mia, it's been a while," he said, with that all-too-familiar grin. My heart raced, not with affection, but with a surge of courage I didn't know I had. "I trusted you," I found myself saying, the words spilling out with a mix of anger and liberation. "You betrayed me, Leo. But you know what? I'm moving on. I'm growing beyond what happened between us." His expression shifted, a brief flicker of surprise, but his remorselessness was palpable. "Mia, we both knew what it was." His casual dismissal stung, yet it was the closure I needed, a clear sign of how far I'd come. The support group I joined became a sanctuary, a place where my story, though unique in its details, wasn't singular in its theme. Here were people who understood the complexity of human mistakes and the rugged path to redemption. Sharing my story, listening to theirs, I found a community that embraced me without judgment, helping me to see that forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, was not only necessary but possible. Forgiving myself wasn't a moment of epiphany, it was a gradual acceptance of my humanity. With each meeting, each shared story, I began to understand that my worth wasn't defined by my lowest moments or the relationships I had lost. This realization, slow and sometimes painful, was the foundation upon which I started to rebuild my self-esteem. In this new chapter of my life, I made friends who knew me not for my past, but for who I was becoming. Together, we built a circle of support grounded in honesty, respect, and mutual growth. Their friendship, untainted by my history, was a gift, a reminder that new beginnings were not only possible but within reach. The reconnection with my family came unexpectedly, a tentative olive branch extended after months of silence. The conversations were awkward at first, filled with unsaid apologies and unshed tears, but they marked the beginning of healing, of rebuilding bridges I thought were burned beyond repair. Amidst this journey of self-discovery, I stumbled upon a hobby that soon turned into a passion, painting. With each stroke of the brush, I found a way to express what words could not. The canvas became my confidant, a silent witness to the depth of my emotions, my fears, and my hopes. Painting was not just an escape, it was therapy, a way to process my experiences and visualize my recovery. This chapter of my life, filled with confrontations and new beginnings, was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was a reminder that out of the ashes of our greatest mistakes, we can rise, reborn and renewed, with a clearer understanding of our worth and the boundless capacity for change. The moment I stepped into the local community center, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. My artwork, pieces of my soul splashed across canvas, hung on the walls for the world to see. This exhibition, a tangible representation of my new life, felt like my first true step forward after so much time spent in the shadows of my mistakes. As people wandered through, admiring the work, their compliments felt like balm to wounds I'd thought permanent. "Your use of color is incredible," one visitor said, and I could only smile, my heart swelling with a pride I hadn't felt in years. This was more than an exhibition. It was a declaration that I was still here, still fighting, still growing. Reflecting on the changes within me, I couldn't help but marvel at the journey. The pain, the loss, the betrayal, it had all sculpted me into someone stronger, more resilient. I'd learned to embrace my flaws, understanding that my mistakes, though a part of me, didn't define me. I made it a point to focus on small acts of kindness, a way to give back to a universe I'd once felt I had only taken from. Whether it was helping an elderly neighbor with her groceries or volunteering extra hours at the shelter, each act of kindness was a step towards mending the fabric of the community I'd once thought I had no place in. Accepting my past was perhaps the hardest step. It meant acknowledging the hurt I'd caused, the destruction left in my wake. But it also meant understanding that everyone has the capacity for growth, for change. My past was a chapter of my life, not the entire story. Hope for the future became a constant companion, whispering promises of what could be if I dared to dream, to strive for better. The possibilities ahead seemed endless, a horizon stretched wide with potential and new beginnings. Rebuilding trust with those around me took time, patience, and a commitment to showing, not just telling, that I was no longer the person who had hurt them. With every action, I sought to demonstrate my growth, my dedication to being someone they could rely on, someone worthy of their trust again. And finally, amidst the tumult of rebirth and redemption, I found a sense of peace. It wasn't the absence of turmoil or regret, but rather an acceptance of my journey, with all its highs and lows. I looked forward to a life of simplicity, growth, and above all, a commitment to living authentically, true to the person I had become. This peace, hard-earned and precious, was my foundation now. As I mingled among the guests at the exhibition, I realized this was just the beginning. Ahead of me lay a path filled with challenges and victories, sorrows and joys. But for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it all, with a heart open to whatever. Imagine this, right? Every morning, like clockwork, I'm there planting a kiss on my husband's cheek. Our life? Picture perfect suburbia. The kind of place where you swear you could hear a sitcom laugh track in the background. It's all roses and sunshine, or so I thought. Now, let's fast forward to me volunteering at this charity event. I'm all smiles, laughter booming louder than the band playing. It's one of those moments, you know? Where you feel like you're exactly where you're, but then, this guy, Mr. Charming Stranger, waltzes up to me with a drink. Thought you could use this, he says, smile all dazzling. And bam! Just like that, there's this spark. Haven't felt that in, God, years? Next thing I know, I'm sneaking texts with him. Every ding from my phone sends this thrill up my spine, mixed with a dollop of guilt. I'm doing mental gymnastics to keep my phone screen from my husband. It's like I'm back in high school, hiding my report card. Then, Mr. Charming UPS the ante. Escape with me, he says. A secluded beach, this weekend. Just us. My heart's racing, thoughts swirling. It's reckless, insane even. But it's like there's this magnetic pull, and saying no isn't in the cards. So, I spin this tale about a girl's weekend to my husband. His trusting eyes don't catch the lie, and it weighs on me like a ton of bricks. But the adventure, the secrecy of it all with the stranger, it's intoxicating. The beach weekend? Straight out of a romance novel. The kind you devour in one sitting. He's all stories and soft touches under the moonlight, swearing it's fate. And I'm there, lapping it up, drowning in this connection that feels too intense, too right to question. I'm telling you, it was a whirlwind. From believing in the perfect life to questioning what perfect even means. Each step, each action, felt like it was leading to something monumental. And boy, was it ever. So, picture this. I'm back home from that whirlwind beach escapade, right? But it's like I never really came back. My mind's still on that sandy shore, tangled up in whispers and waves. My husband's talking, doing that thing where he's trying to catch my eye, but I'm miles away. His words? Just background noise. And then there's my phone, buzzing with texts from him, Mr. Unbelievable. Every beep, every buzz, it's like a shot of adrenaline. Sneaking glances, hiding smiles, I'm in this bubble where it's just him and me. It's exhilarating, but, let me tell you, it's exhausting too. Before I know it, I'm slipping. Missing meetings, bailing on friends, all because I'm too caught up in this. Whatever it is. It's like I'm on this high, and everything else just doesn't measure up. My world's shrinking, and it's all because I can't resist that next message, that next secret rendezvous. Then, my husband, bless him, starts putting two and two together. He's no fool. Notices my long absences, the perpetual glow on my face that sure as heck isn't from the skincare routine he knows I don't have. He's looking at me, really looking, and I can see the wheels turning. One day, he finds it. A receipt from the beach resort, just casually hanging out in my purse. The look on his face? It's like I punched him in the gut. "What's this?" he asks, voice all shaky. And there I am, cornered, coming up with the most cliché line in the book. I needed some space, some time to think. The hurt in his eyes, it's like I'm watching his heart crack right there and then. But do I stop? No, sir, the affair? It's like a runaway train now. We're sneaking off whenever we can, making promises under a blanket of stars, promises that feel too big, too heavy to carry in the light of day. It's reckless, heady, and completely, utterly unsustainable. And there I am, caught in the middle of this mess, spinning lie after lie, watching the world I built with my husband crumble around me. It's a house of cards, and I just pulled the bottom one out. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button, it really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. Alright, so here's where things get really twisted. I'm deep in this fantasy, convinced I've hit the jackpot with Mr. Charming. My head's swirling with this idea that he's the one, my soulmate, even though this little voice in the back of my head keeps whispering, "Are you sure?" Then, out of nowhere, my husband, the man I promised to love and cherish, comes to me with this idea of couples therapy. Can you believe it? He's willing to work through this, through my mess. But me? I'm too far gone, too blinded by this intoxicating affair. We're beyond help, I tell him, and the look of desperation in his eyes. It haunts me. One night, I'm out, and I overhear Mr. Charming at the bar. He's boasting, can you believe? Bragging about his latest conquest, me. My heart doesn't just skip a beat, it feels like it stops. But when I confront him, he's all smiles and excuses, saying I got it all wrong. And me, like the fool I am, I choose to believe him. I want to believe him so badly that I start cutting ties left and right, diving headfirst into this lie I've convinced myself is love. But then, the final blow. My husband, the one person who's been my rock through everything, packs his bags and leaves. He leaves behind this note, all heartbreak and hope, saying he'll always love me and that he's waiting for me to come back. It's like a punch to the gut, a wake-up call I'm not ready for. Just when I think it can't get any worse, it does. I find out Mr. Charming isn't just my Mr. Charming. He's been playing the field, juggling women like it's his job. And when I confront him, expecting another excuse I can cling to, he drops the act. Cold and cruel, he tells me I was nothing but a distraction, a way to pass the time. It's like the floor's been ripped out from under me. Every lie, every whispered promise, it all crumbles away, leaving me with nothing but the harsh truth. I was played, and the cost? It's more than I can bear. Alright, let's dive into where it all starts to unravel, big time. After the whole disaster with Mr. Charming, I'm at rock bottom, right? So, I do the only thing that makes sense to me. I try to go back to my husband, thinking maybe, just maybe, we can patch things up. But guess what? He's moved on. Yeah. There's someone else making him smile now, someone not me. It's like a slap in the face, waking me up to what I've lost. I'm sitting there, trying to process it all, and it hits me hard. The life I took for granted, the man I thought would always be there waiting for me, it's all gone. And for what? A fling that left me emptier than ever. I'm craving the mundane moments I once rolled my eyes at, longing for a normalcy I thought was suffocating me before. As if the universe hasn't kicked me enough, I see him, Mr. Charming, parading around with his new flavor of the month. They're in our spots, the ones we laughed in, kissed in, made a million memories in. It's like he's intentionally twisting the knife, showing off his shiny new toy where he knows I'll see them. Feeling like a total pariah, I reach out to my old friends, hoping for some shred of life I left behind. But the cold, hard truth? I've burned those bridges too. The calls go unanswered, the messages unreturned. It's a lonely realization, knowing you're reaping the whirlwind of your own choices. So, what's a girl to do? I pull myself up by the bootstraps, or at least I try to. Job hunting, therapy sessions, you name it. I'm doing it all, trying to glue back together the pieces of the life I shattered. It's tough, humbling, and sometimes it feels downright hopeless. But what choice do I have? Every attempt to reach out to my husband is met with a polite, "No, thank you." It's clear. His heart, once mine to call home, is barricaded against me. The pain of rejection, of knowing I've caused irreparable damage, it's a constant ache, a reminder of the cost of my choices. And then, as if I needed another punch to the gut, I see them again, Mr. Charming and his latest conquest, laughing carelessly in a cafe we once loved. It's a cruel echo of a past that feels both like yesterday and a lifetime ago. The happiness I once knew now feels like a foreign concept, something I can only observe from the outside looking in. So, here I am, trying to piece together a life from the ruins of my decisions, learning the hard way that some mistakes, once made, carve out a void that no amount of regret can fill. It's a tough pill to swallow, realizing that the search for a fleeting thrill has cost me everything that once made my life whole. So, there I was, a complete mess, but fired up with a kind of angry energy I didn't know I had in me. I'm thinking, if I can't fix my own disaster, maybe I can stop someone else from stepping into this nightmare. It's like, if I could save this new girl from Mr. Heartbreaker, maybe, just maybe, I could salvage a piece of my dignity. I start digging through every message, every photo, all the evidence of his two-timing ways. It's painful, you know? Reliving those moments, but with eyes wide open this time. I compile it all, this damning dossier on the man I once thought was my forever. Then, in the dead of night, fueled by a mix of wine and wild resolve, I send it all off to her, the new girl. Anonymously, of course. There's this part of me that's hoping she'll see the light, ditch the guy, and save herself a world of hurt. But then, the backlash. He finds out, shows up at my door, all fury and accusation. Jealous? Petty? Me? I want to laugh in his face, but his words, they slice through me. Because, deep down, part of me wonders if he's right. Word gets out, because of course it does. Small town, smaller circles. Suddenly, I'm not just a woman who wrecked her own marriage. I'm the vindictive ex-lover, the crazy lady spreading lies. Friends, are those I thought were friends, they start keeping their distance. It's like I've got this scarlet letter branded on me. And then, the kicker. She stays with him. Despite everything, she chooses to believe his lies over the cold, hard proof. It's a gut punch, realizing my grand gesture of warning was for nothing. The world I knew, the people I cared about, it all seems to slip further and further away. I hit rock bottom, feeling more isolated than ever. But then, something shifts. Maybe it's desperation. Maybe it's a search for meaning in this mess, but I turn to volunteer work. I pour myself into it, helping those who have nothing to do with my past, my mistakes. It's not redemption, not really, but it's a start. A way to fill the days, to try to make sense of the chaos I've caused. Slowly, I start to find a bit of peace, not in the forgiveness of others, but in the act of giving. It's no fairy tale ending, no sudden epiphany where everything makes sense. But it's something. A glimmer of hope in a story that's had too little of it. Here's the thing. Life's got this funny way of kicking you when you're down. Just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, I see it. My husband's wedding pictures plastered all over social media. There he is, all smiles, looking at his new bride the way he used to look at me. It's like a punch to the gut, a stark reminder of the life I threw away for a fleeting fantasy. Fast forward a bit, and I'm at this local event, trying to blend into the background. But then, across the crowd, I spot him, Mr. Charming, the cause of all my woes. Just seeing him there, it sends this sharp pang of regret through me. What was I thinking? As I'm leaving, trying to keep my head down, I overhear the whispers. That's her, the woman who chose a stranger over her husband. It's like I'm wearing a scarlet letter, a label I can't shake off. It stings, knowing that's how I'm defined now, by my worst mistake. So, I do what any sensible person in my shoes would do, I find a new place to call home. A small apartment, nothing like the warm, inviting home I once shared with my husband. It's cold, impersonal, a constant reminder of how much I've lost. But then, something unexpected happens. I adopt a dog, a scruffy little thing with more love to give than I ever imagined possible. This dog, he doesn't care about my past, my mistakes. His affection is unconditional. A stark contrast to the complicated mess of human relationships I've tangled myself in. Inspired by this newfound perspective, I start writing a blog. It's nothing fancy, just me pouring my heart out, sharing my story in the hopes of warning others about the dangers of infidelity. It's raw, it's real, and somehow, it starts to resonate. People begin to follow my journey, sharing their own stories of betrayal and heartbreak. It's a small community, but it's something. A connection to others who understand the pain of making unforgivable mistakes. This blog, it becomes my therapy, my way of making amends, even if only to myself. It's not redemption, not by a long shot, but it's a start. A step towards forgiving myself, towards rebuilding from the rubble of my choices. And in the midst of it all, I find a sliver of hope, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there's a chance for a new beginning. Just when I thought I was invisible, lost in the sea of my own mess, something incredible happens. I get this message, right? It's from a woman who's been following my blog. She tells me, your story stopped me in my tracks, made me see the edge I was walking towards. Thank you for saving me from making the same mistake. Can you believe it? My mess, my disaster, helped someone. It's this unexpected beacon of light in the darkness I've been wading through. Buoyed by this, I start putting myself out there more. I'm talking at local events, sharing the raw, unfiltered truth of my journey. It's scary, laying it all bare, but it feels like I'm finally turning my shipwreck of a story into a lighthouse for others. Finding purpose in the pain, you know? But let's be real, the nights are still tough. I'm lying there, staring at the ceiling, and the ache for my husband's forgiveness is this constant companion. It's like no matter how many people I reach, how many might benefit from my cautionary tale, that one person's forgiveness, the one that matters most, feels like a universe away. Then, one day, I catch wind of Mr. Charming's latest romantic casualty. Part of me, that petty, hurt part, feels this flicker of vindication. But it's fleeting, gone as quick as it came because, at the end of the day, it changes nothing of my own situation. I'm out walking the dog, right? This little ball of fur that's become my shadow. We're passing through the park, and it's like I've stumbled into Couple Central. Everywhere, people holding hands, wrapped up in their own little worlds. And there's me, feeling every inch the outsider. This is where it hits me, the full weight of what I've lost. I find this bench, a little island in the midst of all this love and life going on around me. I'm sitting there, just me and my thoughts, and my hand goes to my wedding ring. It's still there, a band of cold metal, but it might as well be a chain around my heart. It's in this moment, this quiet, piercing moment, that I realize no amount of blogging, speaking, or sharing can fill the void left by my choices. No amount of public redemption can stitch back together the fabric of a heart torn by betrayal and regret. So, there I am, alone on a park bench, the symbol of my broken vows heavy on my finger. It's a sobering end to a chapter one never thought I'd write. But here's the thing about stories, especially the real, messy, human ones, they don't always wrap up neatly with a bow. Sometimes, they just end, leaving you with nothing but the lessons learned and the hope that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow might be 5 years, huh? I murmured, twirling the stem of my wineglass as Michael and I sat across from each other in our favorite local spot. It was nothing fancy, just like us, him, a tech guy who could fix anything from a frozen laptop to a broken heart, and me, lost in the world of books, always one page away from a different life. The clink of our glasses should have felt like a celebration, a milestone. But as I looked into Michael's eyes, full of love and unwavering trust, a restless itch crept up my spine. It was an itch for something new, something thrilling. That itch only grew stronger a few nights later, surrounded by laughter and too many cocktails with the girls. I just need a little excitement, I confessed, my voice a blend of longing and guilt. The words felt like a betrayal, not just to Michael but to the life we'd built together. Yet, they hung there, an undeniable truth I couldn't shake off. Excitement found me sooner than I expected, in the form of Alex. He was the unexpected splash of color in my grayscale world, capturing moments with his camera that seemed to scream adventure. Our conversation at the beach event wasn't planned, it was fate playing its hand. His smile, his charm, they were intoxicating, and before I knew it, I was drawn into his orbit. The affair began with a whisper, a secret only the sea and the seagulls were privy to. Our meetings were stolen moments, hidden away from prying eyes, where the world consisted of just Alex and me. Each laugh, each touch, was a brushstroke on a canvas I never knew I was painting. But secrets, especially those bathed in guilt and forbidden pleasure, have a way of clawing their way to the surface. Zoe, my friend who missed nothing, saw us one evening. The look in her eyes, it was a mirror to my own fear. The fear of being caught, of losing everything for a fleeting desire. Michael's suspicions came like the slow rise of dawn, inevitable yet still shocking. The late nights, my guarded phone. They were breadcrumbs leading him straight to the truth I wasn't ready to face. His questions about my whereabouts, the unusual shifts at work, they all pointed to a storm brewing on the horizon. Sitting there, watching the man I married grow more distant with each passing day, I was at war with myself. A part of me wanted to scream out the truth, to shatter the illusion of our perfect life. But another part, the part that craved the thrill of the secret, of Alex, kept me silent. As the chapter of our 5th anniversary closed, leaving us on the precipice of an unknown future, I couldn't help but wonder, was the excitement worth the price? The answer, though I wasn't ready to admit it, lay quietly in the wreckage of the trust one had so carelessly shattered. The moment Michael pulled that hotel receipt from my purse, my heart didn't just skip a beat, it practically stopped. "What's this?" His voice was calm, too calm. It was for a night I'd told him I was buried in paperwork at the store. "Oh, that?" I scrambled for an explanation, my mind racing. "It's a surprise. I was planning a weekend getaway for us." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but desperation made it sound convincingly sweet. He looked at me, a flicker of doubt in his eyes, then smiled. "Really? That sounds amazing, babe." And just like that, the confrontation I dreaded evaporated. But the relief was short-lived, replaced by a heavy cloak of guilt as I watched the trust in his eyes, undiminished by my deceit. The affair with Alex, which had started as a thrilling escape, was morphing into something more intense, more demanding. Our clandestine meetings were no longer just about stolen moments. They were becoming the core of my day, eclipsing the life I had with Michael. It was during one of those rare moments of solitude that Zoe cornered me. "Laura, what are you doing?" Her voice was a mix of concern and accusation. "This isn't you, think about what you're risking." I shrugged off her words with a laugh that sounded more hollow than I intended. "I've got it under control," I lied, both to her and to myself. I believed I could navigate the treacherous waters between my marriage and my affair without capsizing. Zoe wasn't convinced, but I wasn't looking for conviction. Alex's patience, however, was wearing thin. "I can't keep doing this," he said one evening, his frustration slicing through the warm air between us. It's me or him, Laura. I'm tired of being your secret. His ultimatum hit me like a cold wave. The thought of choosing was paralyzing. With Michael, it was the comfort of a shared history, a love that was familiar and warm. With Alex, it was the allure of passion, of something new and intoxicatingly uncertain. Standing at the crossroads, the weight of my decisions pressing down on me, I realized the gravity of the game I was playing. The stakes were higher than I'd ever imagined, and the price of my indecision could be the very life I was trying to escape. As the chapter of my life twisted towards an unknown ending, I found myself caught in the web of my own lies and desires, struggling to find a way out that wouldn't destroy everything I held dear. The world seemed to pause, suspended in a moment of clarity that was as sharp as it was unwelcome. There I was, caught in the eye of a storm I had brewed, torn between the steady warmth of my marriage with Michael and the electrifying thrill of my affair with Alex. My heart, a traitor to both causes, refused to choose a side. The decision, when it came, wasn't so much a choice as it was a surrender to my basest desires. I can manage this, I whispered to my reflection, a vow to continue the double life I had been leading. The affair would remain my secret, a shadow life that thrived in the hidden corners of my days. But secrets, as I was soon to find out, have a way of unraveling at the seams. In a moment of careless haste, my worlds collided. A message, intended for Alex's eyes only, found its way to Michael. "Can't wait to see you later," it read, a ticking time bomb delivered straight into the hands of my husband. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Michael's silence was a vacuum that sucked all the air out of the room, leaving me gasping for breath. When he finally spoke, his voice was a calm that belied the storm raging in his heart. "We need to talk," he said, but the conversation I had dreaded never came. Instead, he retreated, a detective in his own marriage, sifting through the debris of our life together for evidence of my betrayal. The anniversary dinner that should have been a celebration of our love became the stage for my reckoning. Michael's calm demeanor throughout the evening was a prelude to the storm that was about to break. As he presented me with a gift, beautifully wrapped as if to mock the ugliness it concealed, my heart sank. Tearing open the paper with trembling hands, I found not a token of affection but a mirror reflecting the worst version of myself. There, amidst the remnants of my shattered illusions, lay the printed proof of my duplicity, messages, emails, snippets of a love that was never meant to be shared. The silence that followed was deafening, the air thick with the weight of words left unsaid. Michael's eyes, once a source of comfort, were now wells of sorrow and betrayal. "I thought we were building something together," he said, his voice a whisper that cut deeper than any shout could. In that moment, the full magnitude of my actions crashed into me with the force of a tidal wave. The pain I had caused, the trust one had shattered, it was all laid bare, a wound that no words could heal. As the evening wore on, the dinner that was meant to be a celebration of our past became a funeral for our future. Each bite, each sip, was a reminder of what had been lost. And as the night drew to a close, I was left with the haunting realization that some mistakes, once made, can never be undone. The moment the words left Michael's mouth, my world didn't just crumble, it shattered. "I had planned to renew our vows tonight," he said quietly, the pain evident in his voice. His eyes, once warm and loving, now held a depth of sorrow that pierced me to the core. The man who had stood by me, who had loved me unconditionally, stood before me, a victim of my selfish desires. I stared at the collection of messages I'd exchanged with Alex, each word a nail in the coffin of our marriage. The weight of my betrayal, tangible in my hands, was overwhelming. I had imagined countless scenarios of how this night could go, but none came close to the reality. Michael's disappointment, his heartbreak, was a mirror reflecting the worst parts of myself. The dinner, once meant to be a celebration of our love, ended with Michael's quiet departure. "I need time to think," were his last words before he walked out, leaving me drowning in a sea of guilt and remorse. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark reminder of the void his absence left in my heart. In my desperation, I reached out to Michael, calling, texting, anything to bridge the gap my betrayal had created. But he remained unreachable, a clear sign he needed space to heal from wounds I had inflicted. Loneliness became my constant companion, driving me to seek solace in the one person I thought could understand, Alex. But the connection that once seemed thrilling now felt empty, devoid of the secrecy that had fueled our affair. When I broached the idea of us starting anew, his response was a cold splash of reality. "I'm not looking for anything serious," he said, his indifference the final blow to my already fragile state. That moment marked my complete breakdown. The affair had ended, leaving me to face the ruins of my marriage alone. The realization of my mistake hit me with brutal clarity. I had risked everything for a fleeting thrill, and in doing so, I had lost the one person who truly mattered. As I sat in the quiet of our now empty house, the full magnitude of my actions settled in. My affair, once a secret escape, had become my prison, isolating me from the love and life I once cherished. In my quest for excitement, I had destroyed the very foundation of my happiness. The path to redemption seemed insurmountable, a journey I was now forced to undertake alone, haunted by the echoes of a love lost to my unforgivable choices. The silence was deafening, each tick of the clock a reminder of the chasm between Michael and me. With a shaky hand, I typed out a message, my phone screen blurred through tears. "Michael, please, can we talk? I'm so sorry," sent. Then another, and another, each one a desperate plea for forgiveness, for a chance to explain the unexplainable. But as days turned into weeks, my inbox remained a barren landscape of my own making, each unread message a stone in the wall Michael had built around himself. The isolation was palpable, friends who had once filled our home with laughter now crossed the street to avoid my shame. Family gatherings became minefields, each conversation skirting around the elephant in the room. My world, once vibrant and full, had contracted to the size of my loneliness. Then, the divorce papers arrived. They were unceremonious in their delivery, a stark white envelope that weighed more than any book I'd ever held. Michael's signature was there, a final stroke of ink that severed the last tie of our entwined lives. The proceedings were a blur of legal jargon and signatures, a stark contrast to the vows we had once made to each other. Moving out was a quiet affair. I packed my life into boxes, each item a fragment of a dream we had built together. The hardest to pack was a small box of memories, photographs, ticket stubs, a dried-up corsage from our first dance. With each item I placed inside, I felt a piece of my heart tuck away with it. I heard about Michael's new beginning through the grapevine, a bitter pill to swallow. He was moving on, focusing on healing, on rebuilding the life I had torn down. The news should have brought me some comfort, knowing he was finding peace. Instead, it was a stark reminder of the consequences of my choices. In the end, I was left with nothing but the echoes of a love lost, a stark reminder of the cost of betrayal. The chapter of our lives together had closed, leaving me to navigate the aftermath of my decisions, a journey I would have to take alone. The silence of my new, stark apartment was a far cry from the life I once knew. As I sat there, surrounded by unpacked boxes that seemed as out of place as I felt, the weight of my decisions pressed heavily on me. The realization of the hurt I caused Michael and the love I squandered was a bitter pill that no amount of tears could wash away. One day, seeking solace in the anonymity of the bustling city, I found myself at the park. That's when I saw him, Michael. He was far enough that the details were blurred, but there was no mistaking his posture, the way he laughed with someone I couldn't see. He looked happy, peaceful even. The contrast between his contentment and my turmoil was as stark as night and day. Gathering every ounce of courage, I approached him. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and hope, clinging to the slim chance of forgiveness, of a word or a look that could mend the chasm between us. But as we finally stood face to face, the polite yet distant smile he offered me shattered any illusions of reconciliation. "I wish you all the best, Laura," he said, his voice void of the warmth I once knew. It was clear there was no going back. The fallout from my personal life soon spilled over into my professional one. My job at the bookstore, once a refuge, became a series of missed steps and mistakes. Eventually, my boss, with a pained expression, told me it was over. I was out. The dismissal felt like yet another link severed from the life I once cherished. Starting over wasn't easy. I found a job at a local coffee shop, a humbling change from the world of literature I so loved. Yet, in the simplicity of brewing coffee and serving pastries, I found a semblance of peace. It was in this unlikely place that I began to understand the value of simplicity, the beauty of a life uncluttered by deceit and betrayal. One day, through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, I heard that Alex had moved to another city. The news, which once would have devastated me, now felt like the closing of a book I no longer wished to read. His departure marked the end of the affair, not with a bang but with a quiet resignation. Alone in my apartment, now slowly becoming a home, I reflected on the journey. The pain, the loss, and the stark realization of my flaws had paved the way for a new beginning. Working in the coffee shop, embracing the daily grind, I learned the importance of honesty, not just with others but with myself. As I looked out at the city that had witnessed my highest highs and lowest lows, I understood that starting over wasn't just about changing jobs or moving apartments. It was about redefining who I was, learning from my mistakes, and moving forward with a newfound appreciation for the simple, honest moments that life offers. The empty walls of my new apartment seemed to echo back the turmoil inside me. Alone, surrounded by boxes yet to be unpacked, the weight of my actions pressed heavily on my chest. It was here, in this stark, unfurnished reality, that the magnitude of my choices became undeniably clear. I had hurt the one person who had stood by me through everything, and the love I once took for granted was now a ghost haunting the edges of my new life. A chance encounter in the park threw me back into the eye of the storm. From a distance, I saw Michael. He was a picture of peace, his laughter reaching me across the green expanse, a stark contrast to the chaos within me. The sight of him, so content and unburdened, was a sharp reminder of the divide between our worlds now. Gathering every ounce of courage, I approached him, seeking closure, maybe even a sliver of forgiveness. "Michael," I called out, my voice barely a whisper against the breeze. He turned, and for a moment, it felt like no time had passed. Yet, the polite, distant smile he offered me said otherwise. We spoke, words that danced around the depth of our shared pain. He wished me well, a kindness that felt like a dagger. It was clear there was no path back to what we once had. In the aftermath, the cracks in my life grew wider. The stress, the sleepless nights, the endless loop of what-ifs had taken their toll, affecting my job performance. The bookstore, once my refuge, became a stage for my final act of failure, my dismissal. It was a low point, a tangible sign that the consequences of my actions extended beyond broken hearts. Starting over wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. I found a job at a coffee shop, a world away from the shelves of books that knew all my secrets. It was humbling, a daily reminder of how far I'd fallen. Yet, in the simplicity of brewing coffee and the smiles of strangers, I found a semblance of peace. My journey to redemption was slow. Rebuilding friendships, especially with Zoe, required swallowing my pride and facing the hurt I'd caused head-on. Therapy sessions became my lifeline, a place to unravel the why behind my actions and to forge a path toward understanding and forgiveness. Volunteering at the local community center offered a glimpse of hope, a chance to give back and to fill the void with something meaningful. It was here, among faces that knew nothing of my past, that I began to see the possibility of a future defined by more than my mistakes. Tentatively, I stepped back into the world of dating, armed with a newfound commitment to honesty and transparency. Each tentative connection was a step away from the person I was and a step toward who I wanted to be. The lessons learned were hard-won. Communication, trust, the bedrock of any relationship, became my mantra, a vow to never repeat the past. Independence, once a word that filled me with dread, became my strength, a source of pride in the life I was rebuilding from the ground up. Yet, even as I embraced this new chapter, the shadow of my downfall lingered. The void left by the end of my marriage was a chasm that stretched wide and deep. My new life, for all its stability and growth, couldn't replicate the depth of connection, the shared history I had with Michael. Watching a couple in the park, their laughter light and easy, a mirror to a past life, I faced the truth. I had grown, learned, and even found a measure of peace. But the cost was irrevocable, the loss of my marriage, the love and life I once cherished. There was no redemption from that, only the stark realization that some choices, once made, leave a mark that shapes the rest of